Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 286, which is the final episode of this Sasuke novel, the Uchiha and the Heavenly Stardust adaptation. So overall, I think this was a pretty good episode. I think it was a good ending to the arc. It was action-packed. I thought the animation was pretty good. And they hit a lot of the main beats with regards to like the main characters. Like I think the GG reveal and what they did at the end actually had quite a bit of emotion to it. And that was the same across the book and this anime adaptation. I think what remains as the main flaw here is just if you have read the light novels that this arc is based on, it is hard to accept the idea that they literally just didn't adapt basically like 1.9 books. They showed us like a tiny bit of what happened in the Kakashi book, and then just completely ignored that there's a third book. Now, I say that when at the moment I have not actually read the third book of this series because it's not out in English yet. I think it's May when it's coming out. So, you know, I don't really know the full details on that. But for sure, I even looked at it just there. The ending of this Sasuke book does not end with, and we cut to Naruto and he's okay. It ends with the idea of like they're investigating the ultra particles and that there's still a final stage of like kind of figuring something out in terms of like, this is how we actually go about curing Naruto. And I think the Naruto book also kind of covers basically the progress of like how this illness was discovered and how it affects him in like almost like previous arcs as well. So they just ignored that completely. Now that's obviously fine in the context of this was just a 5-episode arc. They only wanted to pretty much adapt one of the books. But if they had reorganized a little bit differently, like I think just the full arc being done, like adapting the Kakashi book, then the Sasuke one, then the Naruto one, could have made for just like, that's a really good, like what, 15-episode arc, or however they would choose to adapt it. Maybe cut it down to 12 if you absolutely had to, or something like that. That could have made the arc, I think, really, really good. Because while this was really good from like an action perspective and they hit the kind of ending notes relatively well, where you maybe saw the flaws of the adaptation was definitely in the idea that Zansul, for instance, is just basically almost like a nothing character, because he's just basically doing what he's doing for the Prime Minister, who, because you never really adapted the Kakashi book outside of like a scene where you saw that character, you don't know who effectively the main threat effectively of the arc is. Now, again, because they're titling this, I suppose, effectively the adaptation of the Sasuke book rather than just the Redeku arc, you know, that changes things. But still, it gets across the idea that fundamentally, Gigi was working for Zansul and Zansul was working for the Prime Minister, and the least important of these is the highest up member of these, and that is the Prime Minister. So it makes Gigi the more interesting one because they actually characterized him and you got to see some focus on him as a character. And that's just one of the weaknesses in this arc with the adaptation, is that, you know, you have to reference stuff that happened in a previous book to make the plot work like at all, because this is where it highlights that the whole plot here is ultimately a setup to connect in with some of the big plot points from the first book. And that's the issue that we kind of have here, is that this army, like, is not to accomplish anything like here directly at the prison. This is the creation of the army. The army is meant to go with the Prime Minister attacking other nations to claim ground for Redeku because of the famine and so on that they are experiencing. None of which was particularly explained, again, because they skipped the Kakashi book, which has a lot of the explanations about, you know, what's going on there and the kind of how the Prime Minister gets captured, what the whole situation is politically in Redeku. We didn't really touch on that apart from the couple of Messenger Hawk updates that Sasuke got. And, you know, that's a bit of an issue in my mind in terms of, sure, I can appreciate so many aspects of this episode, but then it always does go back to the fact that this is an adaptation of a book, and there are some very, very clear and obvious flaws with this that should have been kind of, I think, changed for the better. But this is the way it ended up working out. And, you know, this is where, you know, could they have organized things to include more? Who knows? But I know a lot of people are more focused on, okay, where are we going next? And it does look, based on the description, and we've known for a while, we are finally getting back into manga content here, starting with the next episode. And that's cool and all, except I do think that the kind of immediate content that we're getting now definitely needs some work from the manga. I don't think it immediately just stands out as being incredible. We build up to a very big moment, and then there's a little bit of a cool down after that, and then we build up again to another big moment, which is basically some of the more recent, say like 3-4 chapters. But a lot of the remainder of the manga is a little weak outside of its very, very large moments, and I wonder will the anime be able to execute on that stuff as well as they can, because some stuff definitely needs some expansion. Some stuff definitely feels like it could probably be left out, because it's a section of the manga where it feels like they were still planning out what exactly they wanted to do, and so there's a lot of like ideas alluded to that they don't really kind of touch on as much as you maybe expect them to. But anyway, that out of the way, let's get more into specifically this episode. So like I said, it is a lot of action. It's a lot of Sasuke and Sakura fighting dinosaurs. So it makes for some very cool like visuals to just see that happening. You definitely got to see Sasuke in action, using the sword, using his jutsu. Now, obviously, not the full scope of his powers. And that's always a problem when you have these arcs, is that you kind of think Sasuke should just use the Susanoo, and he would immediately win the fight here. Now, in this case, you have the explanation for that, in that the Susanoo is probably too destructive in a somewhat closed off area, in that you still have prisoners, inmates trying to escape. So if he made the big giant and just started like clearing out dinosaurs with the giant sword, you know, he would catch people in the crossfire. And that's why he was sticking to sort of, you know, his basic skill set, which for him is still expert level. Same with, like, say, Sakura. She was using a little bit more wide-ranging stuff, but also making sure to only do it on the dinosaurs, of course. And, you know, most of this, like I said, it's the action part of the episode. That's what it's entirely about here, for the most part. You have the Menno thing. We obviously got that. They, in the anime, did the... Where that scene happened is obviously different than the source material versus where they did it in the anime. But still, it made the scene, I think, pretty nice when you just had Menno rush in here to be the sort of third kind of like hero character and have some dinosaur on dinosaur fighting. But of course, Gigi is the reveal. You do get Gigi and Zansul kind of like teaming up. But this is where you really see the kind of, in a way, issue with Zansul, that because he's not technically like a fighter on his own, he's just there effectively as this middleman character, where like the only really interesting thing about him is that he has like ninja tool eyes, basically. Beyond that, it's just like a pretty nice character design, and just here he is, sort of kind of controlling dinosaurs overall. But you could sort of tell from the way he gets taken out is that because he's not the jutsu caster, he doesn't fully understand the scope of like how these reanimation creatures actually like take commands, and so he makes the mistake of giving like a really general order of like, you know, everyone attack Sasuke, while he's being held in the air by the same thing he's basically giving an order to, and so it drops him to go after Sasuke, and so that's the, you know, the death of Zansul. Beyond that, you know, we do get the sort of confrontation with Gigi, and this is where I think it is good characterization, that because he was characterized throughout the arc and has a bit of a connection to both Sasuke and Sakura, there is a hesitance to properly like attack the character and go for the kill with him. And so the moment where it's all kind of over and they finally ask him, you know, like, why did you do all this? It has impact. And it links into a lot of the themes that they did explore in the previous episodes. The significance of the ring, the discussion about, Sasuke's relationship with Sakura, and how Gigi views, the way you should kind of be with your wife, how a husband and wife should be, and the way they should interact with each other. It's based on his experiences and what happened to his girlfriend slash kind of, wife to be, and what he thinks happened to her. And that's why the scene before all of this, where of course Sakura is like kind of trapped under a bunch of rubble as we start the episode, and because she's been poisoned, she can't just super strength her way out, so she does have to rely on Sasuke finding her. And they nicely connect the idea of the ring into this, is that Sasuke can basically be aware that because the ring is made of his chakra, he can get there, and that was the way he was able to save her. Now, thankfully, they just have him quickly heal her a little bit to get her back in the action, so she's able to have her action stuff. But it's a very nice scene to connect the significance of that ring, and that this was part of the relationship part of this arc that was also really well done. It's going to be, I think, be one of the main things this arc is remembered for, is the development it gave to the Sasuke-Sakura relationship, which is one... It's a big takeaway. It's notable. People will remember this arc for that. And yeah, the stuff at the end with, I suppose, the reveals with Margot, where he reveals that she died. The basic backstory is that, okay, here's why he's kind of loyal, connected to the Prime Minister in the first place. Here's the connection to Zansul. He was given this attendant, fell in love with her, and, when he was away, she died, and this was basically a manipulation to control him further, of just like fuel his want for revenge so they could control him more. But the reveal is that, yeah, it's just the Prime Minister making that up. She's actually still alive. And if we had focused more on the Kakashi side of the plot, you would have made the connection with the names, basically, that, this is Margot. She's been over here on this side of the story the entire time. And it would have made the little reveals as you got to this part of the arc with Gigi all the more interesting. But, there's your kind of flaw of not doing a very clear-cut part of the arc. But I thought that made for pretty good motivation, that like this is why this character was doing all of this. He was manipulated into reviving all of these dinosaurs with the idea that he would then potentially get the opportunity to revive Margot. And they have the discussion about basically like the ethics of doing this, and the idea of like, sure, on one hand, it is a kind of pretty impressive, display of care that you will go to such lengths to actually want to revive someone from death. But pointing out the idea of, would they want that? Would they want to be forcibly revived in a state where they're not kind of quite truly alive, as kind of these reanimation jutsus tend to work? And that's the problem. And, Sakura even pointing out that, like, even me, I would probably want to do that, even being aware of that. But I have people around me who care about me enough to stop me from going that far. And basically the point is, we care about you enough to stop you from doing this as well. And then they are able to reveal that because you don't need to do this. You have been manipulated this entire time to do all of this. She's actually still alive. And so he kind of sacrifices himself in the last little dinosaur attack. Sakura does save him though, and so he's going to atone for everything he's done by working with Margot to support the new king. And again, it would have more impact if we saw the proper Kakashi arc. Because that's the thing, we saw Nanara for like, what, 2 scenes in the entire arc? Maybe 3? And even then, like across 5 episodes, that's really not that much to get across the idea of what this entire arc was actually about, and so on. You got the bare minimum, I think, from the first episode of this arc, but it needed a little bit more. And again, to highlight to anyone, like, if you have not read the novel, I would definitely recommend reading the Kakashi book. It's already out in English. There's some really strong stuff in there because you get a full Kakashi focus. And you know, the way Sasuke gets his big fight here against the dinosaurs, Kakashi gets arguably an even more impressive kind of solo display as a ninja against like a giant amount of enemies in that book, and it's really, really good. So I'd recommend reading that if you can. And so the way the anime arc wraps it all up is that we just cut back to Naruto and he just says he's okay. So that's the most heavily kind of rushed thing of like, they don't even like particularly establish that like they did anything with the ultra particles. Just the implication that, well, we did all this to get the ultra particles, so I guess we technically used them, but no idea of like, no showing him recovering. It's just like, you okay, Naruto? Yeah. and that's obviously like showing you how kind of rushed kind of aspects of the arc actually were. But they hit the core beats of the main arc, I think, quite well, including the scene at the end with like, say, like Sakura and Ino having the meal together, and then Sakura explains where she got the ring from, remembering, of course, the scene, how it saved her life, basically. But then also realizing that, like, I guess I won't really get a chance to kind of wear this, like, all the time until I retire from being a medical ninja, because, you know, it might fall off, and she needs her hands fully free to be the most ideal medical ninja. So, you know, that's all kind of fitting and stuff like that. So, interesting overall. Like, I'd say just in terms of a pure adaptation of just the Sasuke book, I thought they actually did a pretty good job. I think a lot of the scenes that they compiled together actually arguably in some ways made the anime arc flow a little bit nicer, not having to constantly like step by step add to all these different layers. And so explaining like a couple of different sections at once actually worked quite well, because I think you hit most of the main beats that are in the novel in the anime. The problems are just that this novel that they're adapting is 2 of 3. It's the middle novel of 3 books. And sure, you can say that the Naruto one is maybe more of like it's an extended epilogue type thing, and you can maybe make the argument that the Kakashi book is an extended prologue. There's enough content in the Kakashi one, given that we're all about Rediku here, basically like the introduction of this place. That's where the flaws come in. And I don't know, like, if there was just some sort of a situation where, like, halfway through production of these episodes, they decided to not do more of the Kakashi book, because it felt like they were doing an okay job in the first 2 episodes, at least showing you a little bit of what's going on there. But then they just, like, completely stopped referencing it, apart from the actual connective scenes between the books that are already in the book that they did show here. So, you know, there's that as well. So, you know, anime moving on to, I suppose, hopefully better things here. I'll be very interested to see how they do the adaptation of this upcoming arc, because, of course, big things, of course. We're waiting for the big action scene when we get there, the huge moment. But we're also waiting for the introduction of, like, 2 very, very important characters, of course, that we're very excited to see how they work in animation, and does that help their characterization or not. Otherwise, there's a lot on sort of code here to sort of like prove that he can stand out as the kind of main villain. And there's aspects of him that I like, other aspects of him that feels like he's been failed a little bit by the writing. We'll see if they can deliver on any of this. And this still basically applies to the start of this arc, even to the most recent manga chapter as well. So that's where we're at. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this Sasuke novel adaptation arc. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.